Shvat, and we are on Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis, where we are continuing our discussion. The Gemara had discussed that there is a three-way machlokas between the Tanaim with regards to exactly what the Makar is for their opinions with regards to kares on the first Pesach and the second Pesach, and the Gemara discussed that there are three possible ways of understanding the same exact pasuk. What we saw already was the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda had learned from the pasuk, "V'chadal asayis haPesach v'nichrasa," and then lo hikru b'ma'adai. That those are talking about two separate occasions, and that Chet Yisa is a reference to being chayiv kares even on the second Pesach, because Rabbi Yehuda was learning that Megadef, which is listed in the pasuk, is the same as Mevarich Hashem, that the blasphemer is the same as one who is blessing the name of Hashem euphemistically, that's the same Isser. And since we know that the Isser, that the punishment for Megadef is Karis Mevarich Hashem, that says V'nasach Chetai, that must mean Karis as well. And we can learn a Gzera Shava of Nesias Chet. And Nesias Chet, that in Pesach Sheni there is a Chatas, there is a there's V'nasach Chetai as well. And therefore there's a chiv kares by Pesach Sheni. Says the Gemara, the third line of Tzadi Gimel Amud Beis, Ma lahalin kares afkan namin kares. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Just as there is kares there is kares here as well, and therefore there are two opportunities to be chayv kares in the Pesach season. Rabbi Nassan was of the opinion V'chadala says Pesach. How do you read the pasuk? Same pasuk. V'chadala says Pesach, a person that neglected to make Pesach. V'nichrusa, he gets cut off. Dahainu ki. What dahai ki? What does the word ki here mean? Lashon dahahu. It's explaining a because, meaning daha as because. The word ki could mean four different things. Rashi tells us in a few places. Chazal tells us in a few places that in this case, the word ki means because. The reason that he is being chayiv kares is ki. Meaning, because he didn't bring Hashem's korban in the right time. This is what the Torah is telling you. Korban Hashem lo hikriv b'ma'adai. Because he didn't bring the korban of Hashem b'ma'adai, meaning Barishon, the first Pesach. That's why he's going to be chayiv kares. But if he doesn't bring his Pesach the second, so then he would not be chayiv kares. That's it. Meaning, if he was shogeg at the beginning, he's not chayiv kares, and if he was mazid at the end, he's not going to be chayiv kares there either. So now what are you going to say about the Chet Yisa? Because the pasuk says Lo Yigru b'ma'adai Chet Yisa is going to bury sin. What's the Chet Yisa going on? My Avidle, what's he going to do with that? Says the Gemara, Kasavar Megadif Lav Hainu Mevarachas Hashem, because Rabbi Nassan is of the opinion that Megadif is not the same as the Isur Mevarachas Hashem. Megadif and Mevarachas Hashem mean two different things. Megadif as Hashem does not. Megadif doesn't mean that does not mean the same thing as Mevarachas Hashem. Rashi points out here, Ela Mezamer or Mesher Avodah Zara. The Ikad the Svirulei Hachi Bekritus Tavzayin Mebesim Kritus. Mevarachas Hashem does not mean that that one is blaspheming, one is Chalila saying anything negative about the name of Hashem. It means Megadif, that one is using one's vocal cords to worship Avodah Zarah. And if that would be the case, then Leislan Kares be Mevarich. Then we have no source that Mevarachas Hashem is Chayav Kares, and therefore says Rashi, Ilav Mehacha Gmirla, if not for this source. If not for the relation between Megadif and Mevarachas Hashem, we wouldn't know that Mevarachas Hashem is going to be Chayiv Kares, and therefore V'gamar Hai Chet Oy Dehasa Mechet Oy Dehacha, and therefore says Rabbi Nassan, where the pasuk says Chet Oy Yisa, with regards to Nesias Chet, with regards to Mevarachas Hashem, he's going to learn that Mevarachas Hashem, that Chet Oy Yisa in Mevarachas Hashem from here by Pesach, and since Rabbi Nassan seems to understand the pasuk is telling you that a person that did not bring Pesach Rishon is Chayiv Kares, but Pesach Sheni has nothing to do with Kares, doesn't mention that at all, it would tell you that Chet Yisa means Dafka not Kares, and therefore Mevarach Hashem is not Chayiv Kares, Megadif is, but Megadif is a separate issue. Ma Hacha Kares, Ma Chet Yisa, the Hacha, so Ma Hacha Kares just means Kares. Yeah, in the first so he says in the first half of the pasuk it means kares. Hasam kares. Therefore, there it'll mean kares, meaning what we have learned here is chet oyisa for Rabbi Nassan is talking about the first half of the pasuk as well. Chet oyisa means that there is an equivalence between kares, which we know from Pesach Rishon, and chet oyisa because he didn't bring the Korban Pesach b'ma'adah, meaning b'rishon. And therefore, we know that Mevarach Hashem is also a chiyuv kares, and we learn that from here, not the other way around. Rabbi Chanani ben Akavia holds totally differently. V'chadala says a Pesach, the person that neglects to make the Pesach, as it says in the pasuk v'nichrosa, is going to get kares. If he did not, meaning ki does not mean ki doesn't mean because ki means alternatively, meaning if he didn't even bring the Korban Hashem by Pesach Sheni, that's where he's going to be Chayiv Kares. And what's he going to do with the Chet Yisa? Doesn't that mean that he's Chayiv Kares because he didn't bring the Korban Hashem b'ma'adai? No, it's exactly the same as the way that we read it for Rabbi Nassan, that we are learning Chet Yisa here from the beginning of the pasuk, and Chet Yisa is therefore going to tell me that there's only going to be Kares if you haven't observed Pesach, either Pesach Rishon or Pesach Sheni, according to Rabbi Chanani ben Akavia. And Mevarach Hashem is going to be learned out of here. Okay, Hilkach. Therefore, now the Gemara is going to summarize all three of these opinions and the nafka between them. Hilkach. Therefore, Hazid Bazel Vazev. If a person was intentionally in violation, meaning in the non-observance of Korban Pesach, like we pointed out, one of the Chavra was asking on the chat, do you bring a Korban Chatas for not having brought a Pesach b'shogeg? And the answer is no, because it's not an Isur. It's not an issue. The pasuk says that a person that does any averus b'shogeg, that would be a chayiv misa, chayiv kares. That's where they would be obligated in bringing a korban chatas. But you're not going to bring a chatas. It's not an aver. You weren't over anything. What you did was you neglected your mitzvah sasa. You were mazed in not doing a mitzvah sasa. Hilkach, if a person was intentional in their non-observance of Korban Pesach, in Pesach Rishon and Pesach Sheni, divrei hakol chayiv. Everybody agrees that he is going to be chayiv kares. You're only going to be chayiv kares once, but you would certainly be chayiv kares. Everybody is of the opinion that you're going to be chayiv kares. Shogeg bazeh. If you are unintentional, you made a mistake. You didn't know when Pesach was, the first Pesach. And then you also didn't know when the second Pesach was. Everybody's going to say that you're potter, because a shogeg, with regards to Pesach, is going to be potter from kares. If you violated, you were in the non-observance of Pesach Rishon, v'shogeg b'sheni, and then you messed up Pesach Sheni, meaning you were in Yerushalayim, you could have made it, you just chose not to. You didn't feel like it that day, so you were mazed b'rishon and shogeg b'sheni, and then when it came to Pesach Sheni, you got the dates messed up and you didn't know which what day it was. So in such a situation, l'Rebbe l'Reb Nassan mechavi, both Rebbe and Rabbi Nassan would be mechavi kares. L'Reb Chanan ben Akavia pater. Reb Chanan ben Akavia would say that you're pater. That's, it would say if you were mazed b'rishon. V'shogeg b'sheni, then since you weren't mazed in both of them, Reb Chanan ben Akavia would say that you're going to be pater. And then shogeg b'rishon, if you were shogeg in the first Pesach, ve'hezeh b'sheni, and you were intentional in your non-observance of the second Pesach, l'Rebbe chayiv, according to Rebbe, you'd be chayiv, l'Reb Nassan, Rabbi Chanan ben Akavia, pater, according to Reb Nassan and Chanan ben Akavia, you would be pater in that case. Okay, ad kan the Gemara discussing those three opinions. The Gemara now moves on to the next Mishnah, which talks about a very important conversation, which is how far is far, where the Torah tells you that anybody that's so what exactly is derech hachoika? How far is called far? Zog the Mishnah as follows: Eizahi derech hachoika. What is defined as far in the Torah? Says the Mishnah, min hamoedian velachutz, from Modian, name of a town in Eretz Yisrael today, min hamoedian velachutz, from Modian and outside of that, and the same distance as a circumference in every direction, meaning that circumference where Modi'in is, if you would plot a circle around Yerushalayim with that as one point and Yerushalayim as the center, just plot that circle around, that is the distance of what is referred to as Derech HaChoika. And then we're going to learn out where that comes from, where does such a distance come from. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, this is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says, no, me'is kupas ha'azara v'lachutz. What we are talking about is from the doorstep of the Azara, from the threshold of the Azara and outside. Meaning that if you are in Yerushalayim, but you are not in you're not on Har HaBayis, that's called Derech HaChoika. That's a huge kula, according to Rabbi Eliezer, that even if you are in Yerushalayim, as long as you are not on Har HaBayis, you are not chayv. That's not called close enough. You are part because of Derech HaChoika. Okay. Amud Rabbi Yossi says to him, Rabbi Yossi. It's interesting. In the standard version of the Mishnah, it doesn't have the words Amalei, which makes sense because Amalei is an Aramaic insertion into the Gemara. Meaning, when the Amoraim were teaching over the Mishnah, they said it meaning. Zakt Rabbi Yossi, right? Meaning they put in the Yiddish, the Amalei. So Amalei Rabbi Yossi says to him, Rabbi Yossi, Lefichach, therefore, Nikud al Hey. There is a Nikud. If you take a look in the Torah, the pasuk says Nikud al Hey. On the word rechoika, it has a dot on top of that hey. And anytime that you have a dot on top of the hey, Rashi points out here, rechoika, in the word rechoika. V'chol nikud lemayit hadavar ba. And anytime that you have a nikud, that you have a dot on something, lemayit hadavar ba, the matter is coming to be exclusionary. The mashma siyuma, which tells you the end of something. Laha tevi mahacha, of this word from here. Meaning, it tells you that there is some kind of limiting factor here. The rechoika means that there is a definition that we are trying to indicate here. Lomar, to tell you, lo b'minei sherochik Vadai, not because it is really far, Ella me is kupas hazara v'lachutz, but that it is from the doorway of the Hazara and further inside. Meaning, Rabbi Yossi is saying back to Rabbi Akiva that the Torah seems to already give a dead giveaway that rechoka doesn't mean super far; it means Torah far, meaning. It's a new definition of rechoka that the Torah is indicating here, which is different from what one would normatively call far. Okay, Ad Kan, the Mishnah, there's some machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer, what is called rechoka. Now the Gemara is going to get into how do we know, at least according to Rabbi Akiva, what the definition of rechoka is. Amar Ula says Ula min haModi'in Yerushalayim. From Modi'in to Yerushalayim is 15 million have, is 15 million. Now. 15 million is an interesting calculation. How far exactly is 15 million? So I did a little bit of a calculation. 15 million in our calculations works out, according to Reb Chaim Noah, works out to just under 9 miles, and according to the Chazon Ish, is 10.76 miles. So somewhere between around 9 to 11 miles, which works out to be roughly somewhere between 14.5 to 17.5 kilometers, more or less. Now, I was a little curious about this, so I checked on Google Maps. From the old city of Yerushalayim to present-day Modi'in is about double that distance, a little more than double that distance, which tells me that it seems to be that the Modi'in that the Mishnah was talking about is not the city of Modi'in in Eretz Yisrael today, because the placement of Yerushalayim, that we know for sure, has not changed. But what we refer to as Modi'in today might be a little bit closer. Nevertheless, says the Gemara, Savarlah, it seems to be that, meaning according to Allah, Modi'in Yerushalayim 15 million, Savarlah, and he holds Ki Hada Amar Rabbi Rabbi Bar Chana Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that which Rabbi Bar Chana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. How far can a person walk in an average day? Sora parsas, 10 parsas. How long is 10 parsas? So 10 parsas. I'll drop the link, just by the way, to this calculator. It's very useful to know. TorahCalc.com. You can translate between any of the Talmudic measurements to modern day measurements into all the different sheetahs. 10 parsas works out to be somewhere between 23 and 28 and a bit miles today. So that is as far as an average person could walk in an average day. Now, what exactly is called an average day? An average day, Rashi points out here, is a average day of the year where night and day are roughly equivalent, which would mean during the month of Nisan and the month of Tishrei. That's around the time that we're talking about here, meaning we're talking about the middle of Nisan. That's the relevant day that we are interested in here. So walking somewhere between 23 and 28 miles, let's say 25 miles, that's about as much as an average person could walk if they were walking morning to night all day. That's about the length of a marathon, meaning to walk the length of a marathon in a day is, at least says Ulla, that is normal. A person would be able to do this. So how far could a person theoretically walk in the day? 10 parasas. If you're walking from Alas Shachar until Hanetzachama, meaning from dawn until sunrise, that would be 5 million. That would be 5 million. From Shkia until Tzeis, that would be another 5 million, another 5 million. Pashula Tlasin, that means that you have 30 million in the middle, 30 million that you could walk from sunrise until sunset. It would mean that you could walk 15 mil from 50 mil from morning, from sunrise until midday, and another 50 mil from midday until sunset. Ula latame, and Ula is therefore consistent with his opinion. The Amar Ula, because Ula says, what's the definition of derech chachaka? Anybody that would, if they started walking from outside of Yerushalayim, would not be able to make it by the end of time of shchita, which would mean 15 million, meaning if you started walking at midday, you wouldn't get there until Shkia, in which case you wouldn't be able to bring Korban Pesach because you wouldn't make it into the Beis HaMikdash in time. So that would be the definition. If you started walking from the time of the Chiyuv until the end of the Zman, if you couldn't make it then, as an average person, on an average day, then you are called Derech HaChaika. Amamar, Master says as follows. From from dawn until Netzachama, until sunrise, is 5 million. That's 5 million. That's as much as far as a person can walk. Minalan, how do you know that that's the definition? Meaning, is this like a survey? How do you know that? Says the Gemara, no, we have a pasuk, Dirshu, because the pasuk says as follows in Parashas Vayera, with regards to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, when the morning began, meaning at daybreak, at dawn, the angels started pressuring Lot to get out of there. And then the pasuk says that the sun went out on the world, means that the sun had begun to rise. So you have from dawn until sunrise. And Lot arrived in Tsar. Amar Rabbi Chanina, says Rabbi Chanina, Lididi chazili hahu asra. I saw that place. I saw the place that Lot was from, which is Sodom, and I saw Tsar. And the pasuk says that he walked from Sodom until Tsar, between dawn and sunrise. I saw that place. I saw that distance. And that's 5 million. Meaning the pasuk is telling you, if you take a look at the distance between these two places, no, that's as far as Lot walked, together with his 2 daughters and at least his wife for a short period of time, that ended up being 5 million. So now I know that that the Torah is defining that as the distance that a person can walk in a day, in 5 million. Therefore, you can extrapolate from that to the rest of the day. Kufa. Let's discuss this exact maimer. Amar Ula says, Ula was of the opinion that a person would not be able to would be b'derech hachaika if they couldn't get into the Beis HaMikdash during the Shas Shchita. Rav Yehuda Amar, Rav Yehuda says, now, I'm going to extend that. Anybody that is not able to get there b'shas achila by the time that you need to begin eating it. So that would extend it a little bit further. Rashi says b'shas achila means kol shas achila. Shirach mechatzos hayom kol kach she'yochel lechanis kol halayla achilas Pesach kol halayla. That according to Rav Yehuda, you have the entirety of the night to get there. Meaning, if you started walking and you didn't get there by the morning, so you were walking for 18 hours and you still didn't get there, that's when you call derech hachaika. That is much, much further. Rashi points out here that you have the whole night theoretically to eat Korban Pesach. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Lazar, de Oraisa ad chatzos v'Pasar, as we'll see in the final parak, and as some chavra might remember from brachos in the first parak daf tes, and from the minhag that we have to try to ensure that we eat afikomen by midnight, that there is machlokas between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Lazar with regards to Rabbi Eliezer, with regards to how long you have to eat your Korban Pesach. Do you have until chatzos midaraisa? Do you have until morning midaraisa? Everybody agrees that you should try to finish it by chatzos, meaning either midarabanan or midaraisa. Fine. Rabbi Yehuda says that if you cannot get there until the end of the shas achila, that's when you are called derech hachaika. Amar le Rabbi says to Ula ledirch kasha le Rabbi Yehuda kasha. I think that there's a problem with your shita, and I think there's a problem with Rav Yehuda's shita. Ledirch kasha, I think it's difficult for you. Damar, you say kol she'ein yoch lechanis b'shas shchita. You say anybody that cannot get there b'shas shchita. That's Rabbi says to Ula, that's your definition. V'ha tami sheretz den yochel lechanis b'shas shchita. What about tami sheretz? Tami sheretz also is not able to get in there b'shas shchita because he's tami. V'kamat, and you are of the opinion that shechlim v'zokrim on tami sheretz, that you can do shchita and zrika for tami sheretz. I bet he cannot get there. Fundamentally, he's not allowed to use the Beis Hamikdash at that point in time. And even if he's going to be tahor that night, because there's he's Tvul Yom, went to the mikveh, he's not going to be able to go in today. He'll only be able to get in that night. You still think that his friends can offer it on his behalf. So how can it be? Yeah, you think it's okay for the person that is a Tami Sheretz, he can have a Shchita and Zrika. That's how you hold. And according to you, the person that's derech hachaika is somebody that isn't able to get into the Beis Hamikdash until after nightfall. Well, Rabbi Yehuda kasha, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, this is also going to be difficult. The Amar, he says, kol she'ein yochel lechanis b'shas achila. Anybody that cannot get in b'shas achila, that's called derech hachaika. Tami sheretz, the yochel lechanis b'shas achila. Tami sheretz for sure can get in b'shas achila. And he says that you cannot do shchita and zrika for Tami sheretz. Even though he would be able to get there that night. So, meaning, is it about being able to get there in time, or is there some other factor that's going on here? Amarle, he says, Ula back to Rabba, Lo ledidi kasha v'lo Rabbi Yehuda kasha. It's not a problem for me, and it's not a problem for Rabbi Yehuda. I'll defend him as well. Ledidi lo kasha, for me, it's not a problem. Derech hachaika letahar, because derech hachaika is a definition that is only said about a person that's tahar. There are two separate categories in the Torah. There's a person that is called the Tami, and there's a person that is called the Derech hachaika. And they don't have the same rules and definitions. Derech hachaika is if you are distant as a person that is Tahar. Ve'in derech hachaika l'tami. But there's no such thing as derech hachaika l'tami. It's not a question of whether or not you can get there. If you're a Tami, you are fundamentally outside of the picture of being able to bring Korban Pesach. It doesn't make a difference whether or not you could technically have made it. You're not there. You're not there. Turning over the page to Tzadi Dalal Aleph. Rabbi Yehuda Kasha. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not a problem. Tami Sheretz Rachmana Dachia. Tami Sheretz, the Torah says, he's not able to bring Korban Pesach. It's got nothing to do with whether or not he's close or far. He's not able to bring Korban Pesach because the Torah says he's not. Dirshu, the pasuk says, Ish Ishki Tamla Nefesh. Any person that is a Tamla Nefesh, Mi Lo Yaskinu Shechal Shvi Shalal Yasber Pesach. There we're talking about Tamla that is Tamla Nefesh, as Tumas Mace, and he is on his seventh day, and he would have Hazar Shvi, and then he would be able to go and offer his Korban Pesach, eat from his Korban Pesach that night, if he would have a buddy that would be willing to offer it for him. And in this case, the Torah says no, he's pushed off, even though he could have had somebody do it for him, and therefore, since you see that a Tamei Mace, that on his seventh day couldn't get a friend to do it for him, and even if he has a friend that's willing to do it for him to include him in Korban Pesach, and even though he would be able to eat it that night, you see that there's a different shear. With regards to rechaika means shchita, and tame means eating. You see that those are two separate definitions, two different categories, and therefore the Torah differentiates between somebody that's tame nefesh and their rechaika. Okay, we will continue tomorrow with the Tanur Rabban with regards to somebody that is outside of the Mudin, and whether or not modern transportation would be able to change the definition of how rechaika might be. And looking forward to seeing everybody then. Hope you are having a beautiful beginning to Chodesh Shvat. Looking forward, please God, to an uplifting Chodesh.